The isolated planet of Kesh hid a dark secret. A lost tribe of Sith descended from the few survivors of the crashed dreadnought, the Omen, a society and people which, while stranded for thousands of years, had nonetheless followed and even developed their own Sith traditions. The Lost Tribe of Kesh were very particular, especially when compared with modern Sith. They heavily favored aesthetics, not only in their weapons and fighting style, but in their people and their art. Good-looking Sith of the Lost Tribe were looked upon favorably, as was fine art and craftsmanship. In particular, the Lost Tribe had a real fascination with glass, but alongside sculptures was a much more dangerous piece of art, the Shikkar. Here's a quote about the Shikkar from Fate of the Jedi. The sensors would detect no weapon, as the Shikkar was made entirely of glass. Vistara recognized this one as one of her father's personal collection. It was a piece crafted by one of the most famous Shikkar glassmakers, Tura Sanya. Sanya's work was distinctive, and this was no exception. The Shikkar was narrow and elegant, stark black and white, the hilt slender and long, the blade barely the width of a finger. Its fragility was deceptive. The only weak spot was where the blade joined the hilt. A quick snap would separate the two. So if it wasn't clear based on that paragraph, the Shikkar is a blade used by the Sith. It was made out of glass, was very common among the Lost Tribe, and was easy to conceal. However, what that paragraph doesn't describe is just how painful and deadly the weapon is. The Shikkar was very thin but very long. It was easily hidden in sleeves or under cloaks, and a stab basically anywhere on the body near a vital organ would prove fatal. But that's just a basic knife or vibroblade. The thing that made the Shikkar truly notable was, as the paragraph mentions, their fragility near the hilt. After the blade was stabbed into a victim, it would be pushed in up to the hilt and snapped off, so it would be stuck in the body of the person assaulted. This meant that while the knife was doing immense internal damage and the victim was bleeding, it could not be removed. Not only did this almost certainly spell death, but also a painful one. A Sith being killed by a Shikkar was a sign of disrespect, not only because it indicates that they were assassinated by another Sith, but because typically the blade was not inserted in a way that would cause immediate death, but rather a slow, painful bleeding out. Typically the Sith would guide the blade with the Force, and while in combat they'd probably aim for something like the heart or throat, a very quick kill. In an assassination scenario, they would often just try to nick a vital organ so that death was inevitable, but also slow and painful. You don't have to take my word for it though. Here's another quote from Fate of the Jedi. Vistara had attacked him with a Shikkar, a glass stiletto used by members of the Lost Tribe to express disdain for the victim of the assault. After stabbing an enemy, they would snap off the hilt and leave the blade buried deep in a vital organ, condemning the victim to a death as certain as it was painful. The blades would often be used in conjunction with lightsabers. We see the Lost Tribe using them in situations where they have some sort of stealth advantage or the element of surprise, or if their lightsaber is knocked away or otherwise engaged. Shikkars can also be thrown, but that was comparatively less common. However, even in that situation, if the Shikkar is thrown, a Force user could still break the hip off from a distance using the Force. Quite convenient. One interesting use of the weapon that I like is on Coruscant, where Vistara, who was formerly a member of the Lost Tribe, kills another Sith with their own Shikkar as a way to hide a secret Jedi assault team. Basically, if she had used a lightsaber, it would have been obvious, but the Shikkar simply looks like it was two Sith feuding and one was assassinated. But what makes the scene interesting for me is that Vistara doesn't stab the victim in a way that will kill them instantly, rather they will bleed out over some time. Death is still inevitable, with the wound just piercing part of the heart, but in trying to end the man's suffering, Luke, who's also a part of the party, uses the Force to alter the blade's angle and kills him instantly. On another occasion, Luke's son Ben was stabbed in the leg by a Sith, and only survives with the blade nearly missing the femoral artery, because the attack was not meant to kill. The Lost Tribe also had other custom glass weapons. A notable one was the parang, which was sort of like a bladed boomerang, which they often also carried in the midst of battle alongside their Shikkar. The main advantages of the weapon over something like a lightsaber was, for the Sith at least, the pain they caused. Lightsabers obviously were incredibly deadly, but they cauterized the wound and typically didn't stay in the victim, while glass weapons were engineered to cause as much damage as possible while still guaranteeing death. The Shikkar, as I mentioned, could also be covertly snuck under robes, and not being metallic was not picked up on many types of scanners. They also fit in nicely, of course, with Sith aesthetics. Although we do only see them used by the Lost Tribe of the Sith, they did exist before the crash of the Omen. It just seems like they fell out of use within more practical Sith groups. But that's all I have to say about the Shikkar. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments and I'll try to answer some. Before I tackle today's question of the day, I do just want to remind you guys that I do have a second channel, X2, where I post new Star Wars gaming videos almost daily. I'll put a link down in the description if you want to check that out. Anyway, today's question comes from MC Days Alive, who asks, why is there a carbonite freezing chamber in Cloud City? It's an oddly specific piece of tech that doesn't seem like something they would need as a practical purpose. It seems more useful to someone like Jabba or his bounty hunters. So I don't think it's ever been stated why Bespin specifically has a carbon freezing chamber, but you have to remember, carbon freezing people wasn't the purpose of a carbon freezing chamber. That was just something that could be done. It was like if you would encase people in cement and they would somehow survive. It's primarily an industrial tool, which is why it needs to be tested on Han Solo before used on Luke. In Legend specifically, we learn that carbon freezing over a long period of time can give the victim some serious issues, including complete mental collapse, and that reflects the fact that carbon freezing is not a technique designed to be used on living beings, but rather an adaptation of an industrial technique. The Star Wars wiki page says that Tabana is used during carbonite freezing, so I would guess there was one on Cloud City just because of the presence of Tabana gas there. But that's just my answer. If you guys have something else you think, let me know down in the comments. Also, if you have a question you'd like me to answer in the future, let me know down below with the hashtag AskEck. Anyway, that's all I have for you guys today. As always, have a great week, and may the Force be with you.